I think I'm hearing yes. So this is where the students need to create their accounts and start to fill up the forms. Uh, Technically, all of them are, the first year students. And then once you type in your email address and password, and then, after that, just a second. Okay. Once you type in your address, email address, generally we prefer personal email address, but school email address is also okay. You're just creating your account. The students are creating their account and answering, basic questions in here. And after that, they are uploading their essays in here as well. And the essays generally, Mr. Bullis is our ELA teacher, and they are doing it in that class. They also started to do that. I'm sure the deadline is coming soon or already passed, so they should be ready to upload already. There are 9 different prompts that they were able to choose and then write about. And then the limitation is 650 words. So if they write more than 650 words, they need to little bit shrink it down to 650. And after that, they are able to upload it to this Common App website. And this is the first step that they need to do. The second step is actually more for the recommendation letters and everything. We use this new platform this year, Scoir. We call Amir. Can I choose you to show? Amir.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So every single student, they have their accounts already. They are invited. And as you know that Emir is already active, he logged in 2 times. The last time he logged in, it was a month ago. So we were able to actually track every single one of them over here. So how are they doing? What are they doing? The test scores, if there is any available, they are in here. GPAs, they are in here. Other than that, we have personal bio. It needs to be updated. Activities and achievements needs to be updated for you, Emir. So whenever you get a chance, you need to do that. Okay. I'm posting scholarships over here as well. Every single student, they are able to see whatever I post over here. And I am putting their deadlines here as well. So they are able to log in. Let me make it a little bit big. And then from this direct link, they are able to go into the website and then able to apply for the scholarship here as well. Other than that, the application site is kind of working like this. Students are first choosing their colleges over here. And then once they decided to apply, they are just moving these colleges into this application section. And then it says, which, model that you are applying, early action, rolling admission, and early decision. Let's say early action, and then we are using common application as we discussed before. They are just adding their common ID once they create their application, once they create their account for the common app, and after that they're saving it. So then I'm getting notified, hey, this student is getting ready to apply SUNY Poly. And after that, actually they need to complete these steps. The initial transcript, as you see, we already uploaded into the system. It's ready to go. And then they need to ask for 2 recommendation letters. Could be counselor, could be teacher, could be somebody from outside. So they need to pick and choose and then ask for recommendation letter. I'll show you in a minute how to ask for that. Fee waivers, if they are eligible for the fee waivers, they can ask for fee waivers as well. FARPA, they need to, already do it before they create their accounts for this. So, and it's also giving you the checklist, submit your application for before February 1st. As I said, if you're eligible for fee waiver, don't worry about the fee. Common application essay, it's already submitted via Common App. We don't need to worry about it. Schedule interview is optional. Send your portfolio is optional, but it's really recommended if you're applying for an art school or any type of portfolio that you have in your hand already. And if you want to send it to them just for the consideration, we can upload it over here as well. And as we know that most of the schools this year, they're going test optional. But if you already took your SAT, we are highly encouraging them to, submit those SAT scores for the schools as well, just to get, for the merit scholarships, available merit scholarships and anything.
Question.
Sure.
You know when they're going to be like releasing the SAT scores?
In a month.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
So no problem. And if you didn't take it because of the COVID, there is no problem about it. They are saying that they will be, actually today we had the meeting with the Sunipali. They're saying that they're gonna provide you extra questionnaire, and once you complete that questionnaire, you will still be able to consider, they can still be able to consider you for those scholarships. So there is no problem about it. You will not be disadvantaged in the game. And as we said, you need to ask for 2 recommendation letters, and then all the activity is also recorded over here. So the teachers can see it, counselor can see it, student can see it, and additionally, if Amir decides to invite parents here, parents can see it as well. So you can ask your child to just, add your email address in here, and you will be able to see the whole entire process in the Scoir. I am highly encouraging every single senior to just, invite their parents also into the system. How are you gonna ask for the recommendation letters? Let's use Ember again. Once you go into the colleges and applications and my college's site, manage documents, here where you can ask for recommendation letters. Teacher recommendation, request. Amir, who do you want to request it from?
Ms. Dundar.
Dundar. Okay. So I am requesting on your behalf. Okay.
Good.
You can contact her later on. There you go. So the recommendation has been requested. Do you have any questions regarding Scoir? Anybody? Okay, I'm gonna stop here because I think Mr. Pede is here in the house.
Yeah, just a brief intro. So what we have done so far is basically what Mr. Kovar has been doing with our seniors. So this process has already been in process right now with teachers and the counselors. So hopefully everybody is going to be completing their letter of recommendations, their college essay and everything. So the main topic here today, this evening, is also, especially for parents, as a parent also, the topic that I'm really most interested in is the financial part. When my child go to college, what does it mean for me? So we have Michael Pede here from MVCC Financial Aid Department. So Michael, welcome.
Thank you.
So
Thank you very much.
I have the presentation available, so I'm going to put my screen on. So I'll just go at the pace that you tell me. So we'll go from there.
Alrighty. Well, we could share it. That's a possibility.
There you go.
We could. Perfect. Well, I'd like to thank everybody for inviting me to present tonight. Just give you a little history about my background. I've been in financial aid for over 35 years. And if I wish I could say it's getting easier and easier, but it's not because there's all these different programs. So that's why tonight's presentation is important. It really is. But the other thing too is my girlfriend, my partner, my girlfriend and I together, we have 8 children. And all 8 of them have gone to college. They haven't completed college, but they've gone to college. So the whole purpose of today is to try to give you some ideas, give you some information so that you could approach the college decision making on a very factual basis. I remember one time many, many years ago when I was working in admissions, the gentleman I was working with took me on a campus in Boston, and we were walking around. He told me, he goes, "What do you feel?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He says, "What do you feel?" And I said, "I don't feel anything." He goes, "Okay, this college isn't for you." And the point he was trying to make is a lot of times we make our decisions based on intuitive feelings, what's in our mind, where we want to be, where we think we want to be. But now it's becoming more of a financial question as to whether or not you could afford it. Like I said, 8 kids went through college, and some of them had a lot of loans. My daughter has a lot of loans. She had, when she graduated college as an undergrad, she had close to $98,000 in loans, okay?
Yeah.
But she went to a private college. She went to a private college, and I really didn't have a worry about her taking out those loans because currently right now she has her PhD in biochemical engineering, and as soon as they hired her, she was making 6 figures. So that's another thing you have to think about. What career are you going to go into? What's the payback? And this is something we're going to go through tonight a little bit. And hopefully we'll go through the process. And as we go through, we can try the next slide and we'll go over what the 3 topics we're going to cover today. Okay, next. One more time. Okay, so we're going to talk about when to apply, how to apply, and what's the process. So we're going to spend a few minutes on the first 2, and then we're going to spend a lot of time on that last one because that's going to give you the information that you need. I think will help you make that process. Okay, we'll go to the next slide. Okay, first of all, when to apply. Well, you could apply right now. The financial aid FAFSA, or the FAFSA for the 2021 year already opened. And so the 21-22 years also open as of October. I'm sorry, the 2021 year is open. So also I'm getting confused because so many years. When you're applying for the 2021 year, September of 20 to May of 21. That's the FAFSA that you're going to be looking for. There's going to be another FAFSA available, but you want to look for the 2021 FAFSA. Also, you may also want to look for the 21-22 FAFSA. And that one is the one you want to look at, focus on, and see what's available. Okay, but you could start filling out your FAFSA right now. Now, the FAFSA is a long document. There are over 98 questions on the FAFSA. However, you have to understand that a lot of them is very straightforward. They're asking for biographical information. What's your name? What's your address? What high school did you go to? What is your year of level? But there's going to be a part, about 12 questions that you and parents have to sit down to answer. And you're going to make those decisions, or you're going to answer those questions based on your 2019 federal adjusted gross income, which is found on your 2019 tax return. That's why you're able to file your FAFSA so early, because many years ago, not even many years ago, 3 years ago, we used to have to wait until January of the year that we want to go to college to fill out the form, because that was the earliest your parents could have filled the FAFSA out, the tax return out. No, not so much anymore. You already filed the FAFSA when you're filing for the you're going to file for the 21-22 year. You're going to be using a tax return that's already been completed by your parents. You have already completed it, and all the information is ready to go. Okay. Now, The interesting thing about the FAFSA is there's really no deadline on the FAFSA. The deadline is created by the college, okay? So like, for example, at MVCC, we really don't have a deadline. We tell families you could apply as soon as you want. You could apply as late as you want. We have some students who come in and register for classes on a Monday and they file their FAFSA at the same time, okay? We don't have a deadline, but some other colleges will have a deadline. And that deadline is very important that you realize that deadline, because without that deadline, you may lose your eligibility for campus-based or institutional-based aid. And we'll talk about what that is as we go through the process. But your deadlines are very important. They're going to vary from college to college. And the thing where you have to figure it out is you have to go to the website and see. The website will tell you what the dates and deadlines are that you have to respect and honor. Okay. Next slide, please. Oh, okay. How to apply? Well, first of all, there's the FAFSA. We talked about the FAFSA. Now, some schools require the CSS profile. Now, the profile form is a private entity. It's College Scholarship Service. And if you apply for that, if you apply through the CSS profile form, you will have to pay a fee. There is a fee. Again, where do you find out what's required? What form is required? You're going to have to find out on the college website. I would say 90% of all colleges accept the FAFSA and TAP application without a problem. Some colleges, though, will require the CSS profile form, and you have to figure out what those dates are. All right, now, the next application listed on this slide is the TAP application. Now, buried in the FAFSA, and I do mean buried, but buried in the FAFSA application, there's the TAP application. And the TAP application is going to tell you is your application for New York State aid. So if you're going to attend a college within the state of New York, you can be considered for TAP. So what's going to happen is, and it's important that you understand this, as you go through the FAFSA, you're going to get to a point where they're going to ask for the parent signature and the student signature. And we'll go over that as we go through. But as soon as you sign the form, a screen is going to come up that says your FAFSA has been submitted, but it's also going to ask you if you want to apply for your state grant. It's not going to say TAP. It's not going to say New York State, because remember, the FAFSA is a federal form. So the FAFSA can be used throughout the state and all the states, all 50 states. The TAP application is only for the state of New York. So when you click on that yes, and you say, yes, I want to go to the TAP application, or I want to go to the state application, it will send you directly to the TAP application. And at that point, that's where you begin to fill out the information pertaining to your TAP award, okay? Now, another thing you have to realize too, for those of you who want to be considered for Excelsior, Excelsior is its own grant. It's its own grant. Excelsior, and I have some information about Excelsior as we go later on, but Excelsior is its own grant. So it has its own application. And the issue that you have, the problem that you have, is this year, because of everything going on with COVID and everything, this year, they did not open up the Excelsior application until late June, and they closed it in August. So you had 3 months to file for Excelsior. And if you didn't, you lost your eligibility for Excelsior for this coming year that we're in right now. So just be cognizant of that, so that later on when you're applying and you hear all these different things, what's going on, you'll understand when to apply for Excelsior. Now, what New York State has done in the past, New York State has sent emails out to all the students to apply for Excelsior. They'll do the same process again this year, but the timing is what we're concerned about. We can't tell you when those dates are because we won't know those dates right now. We won't probably know them until after the new year. Okay? Now, we also have down on this list, the fourth application we have is the college application. Some colleges have their own application for institutional scholarships, I'm sorry. So, for example, at MVCC, we do have scholarship dollars, but the scholarship dollars do not come from the financial aid office. They come from our foundation. And there is an application process through the foundation that the student has to go through in order to apply for their scholarship. So if you want to apply for a scholarship and you come to me and say, hey, Mr. Pede, I want to apply for the scholarship, that's really nice. But we're going to direct you to our foundation for the application. Other schools are very similar to that. You could use the FAFSA for federal aid. You could use the TAP for state aid. But if you want to apply for the institutional scholarships, you need to go through their application. Problem is, not every school does it the same way. So you have to research and try to find out what school does what. Now, I just gave you a hint about MVCC, but again, in order to find out what's going on, what you're going to need to do is look through the website. And here's another thing too. Call the financial aid office. If you went through the website and there's no dates there, call the office and say, hey, listen, I'm on your website. Is there a deadline to apply for financial aid? And some will say yes, some will say no, some will say we take it on a rolling basis. So if you don't see it on the website, just give them a call, okay? Next slide, please. All right, how to apply for FAFSA? Well, the FAFSA, like I said, it's about 90 or a little over 90 questions. It's going to ask for your parents' income and assets. It's going to ask for your income and assets. And we'll talk about that as we go on further on. But here's something you have to have. Every parent and every student must create what's called an FSA ID. That stands for Federal Student Aid ID. That is your electronic signature. Your FSA ID is your electronic signature to the FAFSA. It's your electronic signature to most of your federal applications that you're going to need. For example, for those of you who are going to be borrowing a student loan, you're going to be required to do what's called an entrance interview and a master promissory note. Your signature is your FSA ID. So you have to create an FSA ID. Now, parents, if you have an older son or daughter who went to college already and you filed a FAFSA for them already, you already have your FSA ID. So the FSA ID that you'll be using on your next child's application was the same one that you used on your first child's application. You understand that? Okay. So where do you go to your FSA ID? I have the website right here, and I have the other websites as we go towards the end, like the third slide to the end, we have websites. But you go to fsaid.ed.gov. You're going to need your name, your date of birth, your social security number. They ask for an address. They may ask for a telephone number. They're going to ask for an email address. And that's something you have to understand. If your parents create an FSA ID and then you go in and create your FSA ID, do not use the same email, because if you do, they're going to see it and they're going to stop the process. All right. So you have to have a specific email for your parents and a specific email for your student. They have to have, and they have to be different, because if they're the same, they're going to get picked up. We see this a lot, where one of our students, to make life easier, like one of the students told me, he goes, my parents don't have an an email address. Well, we're going to have to create one. Okay. And we're going to have to create one for your parents, because if you have the same email, the FAFSA is going to crash and you're not going to go any further. So again, I'm really harping on that, because a lot of times that's where our students start to lose ground, is they haven't created the right information on the FSA ID, and the FAFSA will not go through. Okay.
But I have a question
Next
here.
one. Sure.
We have some, ELL students who do not speak English. Their parents do not speak English, so they don't have any email address. Like, what do you suggest for those parents and students?
Okay, you didn't hear this from me, but But I would recommend that the student creates an email address for their parents, but it has to be in their parents' name, so that when they do go onto the website to file the FAFSA, they're going to provide all the information about their parents and that new created email address. So, for example, a student, I don't know what your email protocol is, but if a student has a high school email address, I would not recommend the high school email address unless that email address is going to be able to go with that student for 3, 4, or 5 years. Okay? If it does, I see someone shaking their head no. If it doesn't follow them for 3 or 4 or 5 years out, because remember that FSA ID is yours, then what I would recommend is that you use a Gmail account or a Yahoo account or an AOL account or an iCloud email address, something that the student could have. Most students that we're dealing with do have an email address. It's their parents that may not. So one of the things I recommend is that a student create an email address for their parents, but in the node, instead of put like, I'm happy, it might be I'm happy 2, or I'm happy 3, or I'm happy 4, or I'm happy in their parents' first name, something, so that it would distinguish between their email address and their parents' email address. But you're going to need an email address.
Thank you.
All right. All right, next slide. Okay, this is a slide of what the application page looks like for your FSA ID. And basically you create your username, you create your password, and that becomes yours, okay? And as you go through, they'll ask you questions later on about your social security number, your date of birth, okay? One question, and thank you for bringing up that the population of ESL students. Sometimes we have issues that the parents, the ESL students' parents, really don't know their date of birth. They know the date, but it could be 55 or 54. It could be, so what I would recommend is that whatever your legal documents are that you have currently, that's the address that you continue, that's the date of birth that you continue to use. Because if you don't, that's where you start to get into inconsistencies. And not only that, but one day you may have to verify your email, because remember, parents, you may only use your FSA ID once a year. Students, you may use it multiple times. But if a parent's only going to use it once a year, there's a good probability that they're not going to remember it in the next year, okay? So you want an address, I'm sorry, you want a date of birth that's consistent. I'm not saying make one up. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is look at what your documents are and use that address, use that date of birth as what you're going to use throughout the whole process, okay? The other thing too is we recommend that once you create your ID, because you're going to have to create one for your FSA, you're going to have to create one for your FAFSA, and you're going to have to create one for your TAP. And remember, they're going to be with you throughout your whole college career. As soon as you create it, write it down and put it someplace safe, like any other password. If you have a Google account and you write it down, keep it. But again, make sure you have some sort of documents so you retain that information, because you're going to be using it year and year again. You know, it's interesting because we'll have a student who'll come to us in, like, usually in the beginning of the academic year and say, well, I was planning to go to so-and-so college or this college or that college, and now I have to add MVCC to the FAFSA list to get it sent to you. That's right. That's what they have to do. What ends up happening, though, is the student can't remember their FSA ID. And then what happens is you type in too many times. And what happens when you type in the wrong password too many times? They lock you out. And then you got to wait. Usually you have to wait like 30 to 45 minutes, but it just gets frustrating. So what I'm asking you to do is once you create your ID, Parents and students, once you create your ID, please write them down. Please write them down. Okay. Next slide, please. Okay. When you're applying for the FAFSA, there's several ways you can go, but we recommend this website right here. And again, you'll need a copy of your 2019 federal tax return. And one more time. Next slide, please. This is what you're gonna. This is the what we call the landing page. This is where you're gonna land up when you file your FAFSA and you start the process. Okay, and they're gonna ask that you start here or you log in. And it's very simple. If you've never filed a FAFSA before, then what you do, you go to start here. If you file your FAFSA and you have to add something or change something, when you get into this form, you're going to hit login and then proceed on with that. So again, this is just an example of what the form looks like. All right, next slide, please. All right, let's talk about the process. The process is really simple. Everybody tries to make it so mysterious, but it's not. What it is basically is your cost of education, and your cost of education is going to differ from college to college because your tuition is different, your housing is different, everything is different. So your cost of education is going to be variable, okay? The estimated contribution loan, the estimated family contribution, that's what's calculated when you file your FAFSA. After you file your FAFSA, the federal government calculates what your EFC is based on the formula, and they give you what we call an EFC, an estimated family contribution. I call it the expected family contribution. And the reason why I call it the expected family contribution is because you never expected it to be so high, but it is. So this is what happens now. We look at your cost of education, we look at what your estimated family contribution is, and that's what we determine what we call financial need, okay? Now, these are very important terms here because what your financial need basically is how much financial aid the college is going to give you to attend their college. Now, I'll be very honest with you. Not every college will support that 100%. And an example that I can give you is MVCC. We have very little institutional money, so we don't meet 100% of the financial need, okay? How do you come up with the difference? Well, either you have to change either your expected family contribution, the student may have to pay a little more out of pocket than usual, the parents may have to pay a little more. So that's where the concept of financial need comes in. Some schools say, well, we meet 100% of financial aid, but they have to take out loans to meet that, okay? So it's very different on how different colleges work this formula through. And again, the whole idea of today's meeting is to try to educate you as a consumer so you can make a good financial decision as you go through the process. Okay, can we go to the next slide, please? All right, so basically, when you're determining the cost of education, there are 7 items that you must look at. They're tuition, fees, books and supplies, housing, food or meal plan, travel, you got to get back and forth to school, and personal expenses. Personal expenses are what I call your sundry items. You know, well, let's go out to the movies today. You know, maybe this weekend we could go out to the movies. We do build it in. Now, some build in small amounts, some build in big amounts. It really just depends upon the college that you're attending. But all this information, every bit of this information can be found on the college website, all right? So if you were looking at MVCC, for example, you would go to a section that says prospective student, and there's a cost of college. You click on cost of college, and there's the list of everything that how much your tuition is, how much your fees are, what we estimate for books and supplies. Everything is there. Now, this is where you have to be careful. This is what the federal government and the National Association of Financial Aid Administrators say that every cost of education should contain. But does every college include all these costs? And the answer is no. So when you are given an award letter and it doesn't explain what the cost of education is, I would give the financial aid office a call and say, hey, how are you coming up with this number? So for example, and I'm sorry to use us as an example, but that's what I know. But MVCC, when we send you an award letter, we're going to say your cost of education, if you're living in the resident hall, is about $24,000 a year. And you're like, wait a minute, how's it $24,000? Tuition is only $45.90. How can that be? Well, housing is almost $11,000. Okay, between your room and board, each semester, it's almost $11,000. We budget, now you don't have to pay, but we budget in the cost of education, books and supplies, of about $1,600. Now, is this what you're actually going to be charged? No, but that's what we have to do to make an estimated guess as to what it's actually going to cost you to attend college. Same thing for our commuter students. A lot of times we'll get phone calls from commuter students saying, how come you put room and board in my financial aid package? I'm going to live at home. Well, mom and dad, just because your son and daughter went off to college, where are they going to eat? Home. Where are they going to stay? Home. You're paying for heat. You're paying for heat, electricity, for food. Like I said, we had 8 kids, okay? And out of the 8 kids, 5 of them were guys. So you know what our food bill is like. But that's why it's there for. It's to give you an estimated cost of what it's going to cost your son and daughter to go to college. Now, you may say, well, I only want to know about tuition and fees because I'm a commuter student. That's okay. But what about getting back and forth to school? What's the fee? Driving the car. So that's why we put things in like travel, books and supplies. Now, books and supplies may vary. You may be in a program that only needs $500 a semester, $1,000 a year. That's okay. But we put in the $1,600 for the programs that are more than that. For example, we have an airframe and power plant program on our campus. The toolkit alone is $3,500. So when we sit down and talk to the students, we tell them what their financial aid is going to be. But we also tell them, they say, well, I see the cost is only $4,457. Yeah, that's what tuition is. But you have your tools. You got to have your tools, and that's $3,500. Then there's a special clearance they have to have, security clearance, that costs $1,700. So when we sit down with the airframe and power plant students, we're going to discuss that with them, and we're going to talk to them about that. So whenever you go to a college and you ask for what's the cost of education, these 7 items should be there. Next slide, please. All right, let's talk about what goes into the estimated family contribution. Parents' income, parents' assets, the number in the family, the number in college, students' income, students' assets. So those 6 items, okay, those 6 items have an impact on what the estimated family contribution is, okay? So you got to look at that and you got to see what's going on. And again, it's pretty straightforward. Parents' income, that's right off the tax return. You can't change that. It's there. Now parents' assets, a lot of times I get asked the question, does my retirement count here? The answer is no. Anything that you have that's an IRA, that's through your company, or an IRA that you may have established for yourself. That's set aside for retirement. That asset is not included. But if you have money in the bank, that's very liquid. You can take it out anytime you want. That you do have to include. For us who own homes, okay, if you own a home, your first home is not included. All right. If you own a series of homes, multiple homes, then they are included. So it really depends upon the situation that you're in, but that's a little bit of makeup on the assets. We get a lot of phone calls sometimes, and sometimes I get phone calls from parents that I advise them that they have to change their FAFSA because they put in what their retirement funds were. And it's like it totally blows them out of the park of eligibility, but they shouldn't have done that. So I asked them to revise the FAFSA, and they have to go back in and revise it. But these are the 6 things that are used to calculate our, next slide, please, estimated family contribution. Okay, so now we know what the cost of education is. We know what the estimated family contribution is. The question is, how do we get our financial need met? And basically, there are 2 forms of aid. Next slide, please. Okay, well, we have an interest. What the college does is the college looks at what your cost of education is, looks at what you can afford, and we're the ones that determine what financial aid we can offer you. Okay, I'm sorry, now next slide. Basically, financial aid is broken up into 2 groups of aid. It's grouped into self-help and gift aid. Now, gift aid is the really nice aid because gift aid doesn't have to be paid back. Now, there's different types of gift aid and different types of self-help. And we'll go through that on the next slides, please. Okay. So gift aid is usually any scholarships, any grants that the federal government is giving out, that the college may be offering, that the state may be offering. So for example, grants, when you hear the term grant, it usually means that there's a need component based on it. So you have to show financial need. How do we determine financial need? Cost of education less EFC. That financial need determines what your award's going to be. That EFC is going to determine what your federal grants are going to be. So some federal grants are Pell Grant and SCOG. For the state of New York, we have TAP, we have part-time TAP, we have aid for part-time study, we have Excelsior, okay? And private institutional scholarships are money that the college will give you. Remember the daughter I told you that had $98,000 in student loans? She also had close to $80,000 in scholarship money that the college that she was going to gave her over the 4-year period, okay? Now, she was a chemical engineering major, and she was a female. So they wanted to recruit her into the program because she was a female going into chemistry. So they gave her a scholarship of $20,000 a year. We'll talk about those a little later on as we go through the process, because whenever there's an old saying, nothing's free. When you're getting an institutional scholarship, the question you have to ask is, what do I need to do to maintain the scholarship for the next 2, 3, or 4 years that I'm here? And we'll talk about that again in a little more detail as we go through. Now, another category is private scholarships. Private scholarships are scholarships that are offered through the community. They're offered through maybe an employer may have a scholarship. You know, your parents' employers may have a scholarship for you. If you're your employer, there are some grocery stores in the area that have scholarships for their students. So it's very important that you can see this and see what's going on. It's a very good possibility. Okay, next slide, please. All right. What I want to do is zero in on TAP a little bit. TAP stands for Tuition Assistance Program. It's only for students who attend a college within the state of New York, okay? Does that mean you could attend a private college and get TAP? Yes, okay? But if you decide to go to New Jersey No. All right. It's only if you attend a college within the state of New York. The grant must be applied towards tuition. You have to be enrolled full-time or part-time if you've already been to college for at least 24 credit hours. The range of the TAP award can go as low as, well, it could go as low as $0, but they say the minimum TAP award is $500, $250 a semester, or the highest part, based on the student's tuition and financial need, could be $5,165. Okay? The amount of the award is based on the New York State taxable income, right? New York State taxable income, which is different than your federal adjusted gross income, okay? But again, you could calculate it out. There's a way to calculate it out. And what we say is the income cutoff for TAP is about a New York State taxable income of about $80,000. And again, that's going to depend upon how many children are in the family and also how many are in college. Okay, next slide, please. Excelsior Scholarship. When this was first brought out to the public, we were hearing terms like, "Oh, you're gonna go to college for free. Oh, it's not going to cost you anything to go to college." Well, the problem with that was it really wasn't true, and here's why. First of all, not everyone was eligible for the scholarship. You had to have a federal AGI, for example, to get your scholarship for 21-22. No, let's see here. 21-22. You're going to need a 2019 AGI, just a gross income of $125,000 or less. Okay, that's number one. Number two, the scholarship is a scholarship of last dollar. Well, what does that mean? Well, that means whatever your tuition cost is, less TAP and Pell and any other scholarships you have will tell you what you're eligible for in the Excelsior Scholarship. So that's the last dollar they give you. So here's an example. If your tuition is $3,000 a semester and you're getting a TAP award of $2,000 and you're getting a Pell Grant award of $1,500, that exceeds the cost of your tuition and you're not going to get anything. Now, if your tuition was $3,000 and say you got a Pell award for $1,000 and a TAP award for $1,000, well, 3,000 minus 2,000 gives you an unmet need of $1,000. So you'll receive an Excelsior Scholarship of $1,000. So that's why it was kind of deceiving, because we would hear students who were getting full TAP and full Pell saying, "Well, where's my Excelsior Scholarship?" Well, you're not eligible for it because of the difference between the two. So it was very interesting. So it's the cost of tuition less TAP and Pell and other scholarships. Again, remember, you need to apply for this separately, and the window has not opened for Excelsior yet for the 21-22 year. And you need to apply, and you need for this year, for this academic year, the deadline has passed. Okay? But usually the deadline is right around August. So what I would recommend that when you're applying for financial aid for 21-22, you make sure you're looking at the HESC website to see when that window is open for Excelsior Scholarship. And again, Excelsior Scholarship is only for SUNY schools. All right, this is only for SUNY schools. There's another scholarship for private awards, but this is only for SUNY schools. Okay, next slide, please.
So, Mike, it doesn't cover any of board and room, right? It's just the SUNY tuition. That's it.
That's correct. It doesn't cover room, board, books, fees, or anything like that. And again, that's another thing that was a little deceiving. And I don't think they meant it to be that way. I just think the way it was marketed was misleading.
Does it cover CUNY?
It does cover CUNY. It covers CUNY and SUNY. All right, institutional scholarships and grants. It's going to depend upon whether or not you need a separate application. Again, you have to look at the website to find out if you do. But most institutional scholarships can be awarded automatically through the FAFSA. Some do, some don't. Like I said, we don't. But some schools do. I worked at another college that it was basically, we were looking for students who had a GPA of a certain GPA. Well, a scholarship that's very close to this that we offer is the presidential scholarship. You have to be a certain percentage of your class, your graduating class. You have to have a certain GPA. You have to live in Oneida County. And then you get, again, another one very similar to Excelsior. You get the cost of tuition less TAP and Pell. So that scholarship, the presidential scholarship through our college, doesn't require a separate application. We look at it, we determine it through the department, through our admissions department, and then they tell us who the candidates are and we award the scholarship. But some scholarships you have to apply for, okay? Now, the difference between a scholarship and a grant, and sometimes we get this jumbled up, the only thing you really have to remember is both scholarships and grants are free money, okay? Now, some scholarships, though, have a merit part of it, okay? You have to be, I don't know, you may have to be in a certain background, a certain, community group, or you may have to be, done volunteer work through Vista or through Neighbors Associates or something like that, all right, in order to be considered for that. Some schools offer scholarships based on community service. Some schools base scholarships based on your activity within your community. There's a whole bunch of different things. But what I would recommend that you do is most colleges will list what's available on their website. I would go through that and see what's available and see which one you may be eligible for. Now, here's what I'm going to talk about in terms of institutional scholarships. There's usually a hook involved with this. Like, for example, my daughter's scholarship, which was $20,000 a year, she was a chemical engineering major, okay? And the requirement was she had to have a 3.85 cumulative GPA. That is almost impossible, right? I mean, most first-year students only get like a 2.0, 2.5. But that was the requirement. So at the end of her freshman year, if she didn't have a 3.85, guess what? She lost that scholarship. And she wasn't able to get it back. So if she only had a 3.8 and next semester got all, straight 4.0 and brought her up to a 3.85 again, she was done. Okay. And this is the one I love the best. There was an institution in the local, not in the local area, but towards the Western New York area, that was giving out $25,000 in freshman scholarships. Well, how many years do you think a person is a freshman? Once. So even though they were saying, yeah, you could get it for 4 years, no, you weren't able to. Because once you achieve 30 credit hours, they cut the scholarship off from you. So but these are things you have to look for. These are things you have to try to find out. Because you don't want to set yourself up to fail. Because you may be really, really working hard, but the school put this astronomical requirement on it, and it's like, is this realistic? So, if it was a $1,000 or $2,000 scholarship, you might be able to make that up some other way. But if it's a $25,000 scholarship, that's a lot of money. So it's something you have to think about when you're looking at scholarships. Next slide, please. Okay, self-help. What's self-help? Well, pretty much what it says. You're helping yourself. So really the two biggest parts of self-help, the two forms of funding through self-help is work study and loans, student loans, work study and student loans. Okay. Now, work study is very interesting. Most schools don't put your work study on your bill. It's something you have to work for. You earn it, you get paid, and it really helps you for your incidentals. You know, if you need to go and if you want to go out one night and you want to go out with your friends and go to a movie or something like that, the work study will help you pay for that. Okay. It'll help you pay for maybe a book that you need, or if you need a notebook or something like that later on down the line. It'll help you like that. But very, very rarely does work study go directly against your bill, okay? It's on part of your financial aid package because it is federal aid, but the money's going to go directly to you. And then what you do with it is your responsibility, okay? Now, work study can come in really two forms. There's the federal work study, where the federal government pays the school to pay you. And then there's what we call institutional work study, or what we call student assistant, where the institution is actually paying the student, okay? But again, both those forms of assistance usually do not go as a credit towards the bill. Federal student loans, right now we're calling them federal direct student loans. The name may change in another year or two, who knows? But federal direct student loans, there is interest on loan. There are basically two types of federal student loans. You have the federal direct subsidized loan, and you have the federal direct unsubsidized loan. Here's the difference. The subsidized loan does not accrue interest while you're in school, okay? So if you borrow $3,500 and you graduate in May, and you borrowed only one loan and $3,500, the amount of your loan is going to be to repay is going to be $3,500, right? There's no interest accruing on it. The unsubsidized loan does accrue interest while you're in school. So if you borrow the $2,000 and you graduate and you didn't borrow any more loans, when you go into repayment, you're not going to pay back $2,000, but you're going to be paying back like $2,200 or $2,500. So that's the big difference between subsidized, no interest while you're in school, and unsubsidized interest while you're in school. Okay, both loans start 6 months after you graduate. You can go on to the next slide. Both go 6 months after you graduate. And you do have a deferment period for that time not to pay your loan. Now, the interest rates right now on the federal direct, on actually both loans, but if they're dispersed after July 2021, which yours will be, the interest right now is 2.75%. Now, there's an old saying, I'm here from the federal government, I'm here to help you. I don't know if you really want to believe that, but anyway, when you borrow a student loan, the federal government takes a percentage off the top, okay? So if you borrow $2,000, you're not going to get $2,000. You're going to get maybe $1,989 or something like that. But they take 1.05% off the top. So you need to count. It's not a lot of money. It really isn't a lot of money, but I used to work at a medical college where our students used to borrow $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 a year. That 1% was a lot of money. You got to figure this out. On a $20,000 loan, that's $2,000. So I'm sorry, that's $200. It starts to add up real quick. Next slide, please. Private scholarships. Private scholarships are scholarships that you would find in your community. Like I said, your employer may have some, your mom and dad's employer may have some. What I would recommend that you do, Mr. Arzo, do you have a list of scholarships that the community offers?
Actually, our college guidance counselor, he has them and he's sharing it with the seniors.
Great. Okay. So that's good to know because, you know, it's not a lot of money, but you could get $200 or $300, $400. I remember when my every one of my children did get some small amount of money, but it was great. I mean, you know, it was a book. It was like the supplies that they needed. One of my children lived very close, and they went to school in the Rochester area. You know, they were able to. That was their transportation home for a semester because they took the bus home. Um, Even, you know, a lot of people say, "Oh, it's only $200. It's not worth it." Yeah, it can be. And here's something else you have to remember too: a $2,000 scholarship is a $2,000 scholarship. But you know what else is a $2,000 scholarship? 10 $200 scholarships. So it's something you want to think about, and it's something I think you really should, you know, consider. Don't just apply for one; apply for multiple ones. And I have a website that you can do a search if you go through.
I think that would be great. So I can take it from you. One more thing, and our actually charter school also gives scholarship for our graduates as long as they keep certain GPA. I don't remember off the top of my head. They are getting a $1,000 scholarship each year. So it's up to $4,000 for 4 years. So that's, again, good amount of money, like you said.
It is. It's great amount of money. You know, it's books. It's amazing. You know, like I said, I I tell a story about my daughter and why deadlines are so important. Well, I told you, I keep on telling you, she had a $20,000 scholarship. Well, this is before electronics and all that. She was awarded this $20,000 scholarship for 4 years, so it's an $80,000 scholarship. But what she had to do was she had to respond by April 1st.
Mhm.
So we're at the dinner table one night, and I asked her, I go, Michelle, did you return your award letter? Dad, I'll do it tomorrow. Okay. All right. Next day, Michelle, did you return your award letter? Dad, I told you I'll do it tomorrow. Okay. Okay. Third time I get, Dad, I told you I'll do it tomorrow. And I said, you know what? Okay. I don't care. Well, April 1st comes and we're sitting down, we're having dinner. And I go, Michelle, did you return your award letter? And she goes, Dad, I'll tell you, I told you to send it in tomorrow. And I looked at her, I go, well, you know what? You're at it tomorrow's because today was April 1st. And she started to cry, So I let her cry for about an hour or two. And then I went to her and I said, well, what are we going to do now? You can't go to this college without the $20,000. What are we going to do now? And she's hysterical, crying. And she goes, I don't know what I want to do. I don't know what I want to do. Get out of my room. Get out of my room. And I'm like, okay. I said, oh, by the way, April Fools. And I walked out the door. And she comes running up to me. She goes, what do you mean April Fools? I said, I called and told them you were coming, so they got the scholarship.
That was good.
But it's important. I joke around like that. And if she knew I was telling you this, she'd probably kill me. But the point is, you really have to pay attention to dates and deadlines. And it's a hard process, but it's really not a difficult process. So it could be done and very easily done. Okay, some helpful hints to remember. Decisions to attend college is a choice. And related to that choice, there's a cost, okay? So when you're looking at your colleges, and mom and dad and students, I truly think it's a great idea for the three of you to sit down and talk about that. You know, how much can we afford? How much can we do this? I sit down with every one of my children. I know I'm in the business, so I understand this, but I sit down with every one of my children, and I said, if you go to this college, you're going to have to borrow this amount of money. If you go to this college, this amount of money. So my family's pretty much split between 4 and 4. I had 4 go to private colleges, and I had 4 go to SUNY colleges. But the ones that went to SUNY colleges have no student loans. So this is something you have to think about as you go through it. There's a cost to the choice that you make. And it's not a bad idea to sit down and talk about that. It really isn't. Because I think, you know, parents, as a parent, I want my son and daughter to understand what's going on, and that that college should be made based on the best program and where you want to be and all that stuff. But there's also a financial aid cost. Now, this conversation I'm having with you tonight, I would have never had this conversation with parents 15 years ago, even 20 years ago, because there was enough financial aid at that time to go around. But the federal and states, they're cutting back, and tuition is going up and up. So you have to read that. Read all admissions and financial aid material. Determine which financial aid application to complete. Remember, you have the FAFSA, you have the TAP the HESC application, TAP. You have the CSS profile. You may need an institutional application. Read the website. See what you need. And if you don't have the websites, what are you going to do? Contact the college. Okay? No financial aid application deadline. Remember my daughter on that one. Remember the deadlines. Okay? Next slide, please. Most colleges start to notify you of their admissions outcome on April 1st, right around there. It may start to become sooner. What we're seeing in the community is financial admissions notifications going out sooner. But it's just something you have to, again, that's when, keep your eye open right around the middle of March as to when the financial aid decisions in. Also, the admissions decisions are coming in. Some admissions decision, you may have heard the term of early admissions or early decision or something like that. That's fine, but they have different dates and deadlines, and you have to know that. And what you have to understand is which one locks you in, which one doesn't lock you in. And again, that's something that you really have to reach out to the college and find out which end is up on that decision, okay? And take action on all, if the financial aid office is asking you for a tax return, please respond to them. If they're asking you for a verification form, please respond to them. It's very, very important. Here's the list of websites that we have, and I try to put down what they're for. But the one that I'm going to say I like, but I'll tell you why I like it and why I don't like it. How's that? Fastweb.com. That's a free scholarship search, but remember, nothing is free. When you register on fastweb.com, guess what they ask for? Your email address, okay? So guess what they do with your email address? Even though they tell you they don't sell it, they probably do, because after my son registered there, he got tons of emails. So just be cautious about that. Remember, again, it's a free website, so that's part of who they are, and they're not making the money off the student. They're going to probably make it off the advertisers. So just keep that in mind. But there are other good resources. Start here, get there.org. It's a New York State Higher Education Service Corporation website. But it talks about grant information for the state of New York. There's reference material. There's a comparative college worksheet on that website where you could actually go in and put college A, B, and C and see what the difference is. And what I love about that comparison sheet is you may get a $20,000 scholarship, but tuition at that college is $40,000. And another college, you may get a $10,000 scholarship, but tuition at that college may only be $10,000. So it's not just the value of the scholarship that makes the decision, it's what percentage of the tuition that makes that tuition. And that's what you really have to look at when you're going through this process. Okay? We're really almost done, I promise you. Next slide. Okay. This is what I'm going to ask that you do. Please, you have to do this. Number one, the last but not least. Next click, please. Enjoy what you're doing. As you go through the process, enjoy it. It's a lot of fun. It really is. And it's if you get to go visit colleges, that's great, because you're experiencing different parts of the state. You may be experiencing different states. It's a lot of fun. when I was taking my kids around to visit colleges, I was taking one of my sons around, who's also an engineer in Buffalo. But we were, he went to ESM, so he's a tree hugger. So, but what we were doing is I put a tape in. Back then they had tapes. So I put a cassette tape in, and it was the Grateful Dead. And he looks at me and goes, "Dad, what are you doing?" I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "You like the Grateful Dead?" And I go, "Yeah." That's what I heard when I was in college. So we had a bonding point at that time. So enjoy it, have fun. And last but not least, again, next slide, please. I think there's one more slide.
That's
Unfortunately, this is the last one.
Okay. Last but not least, if you need help, if you really need help, please don't hesitate to call our financial aid office, okay? We can help you with the FAFSA. We can help you answer any questions that you have. Don't hesitate to give us a call. Now, with COVID, we're running a little lean in terms of staffing. We're on a rotating team basis. So you may not get a call back right away, but you will get a call back. The other thing that you have, we have an email address that's fin, F-I-N, aid, A-I-D, finaid.mvcc.edu. You could ask a question on that form or on that website. Email